He is the best modern Magic the Gathering player on Earth, and today I'm going to uncover the secrets that have him dominating competitive play over the past year. And if you're paying attention, you already know the name. Let me introduce you to Xerk. Tallying a total of 9 challenge wins, he is one of the most accomplished players in modern history. And today, he has gifted us with a look inside his most recent challenge win to uncover the 8 secrets that led to his victory. Xerk is known for his prowess with the deck Black-Green Yawgmoth, a creature-based strategy that leverages the interactions between Yawgmoth, Thran Physician, and Undying creatures to build your own Yawgmoth's Bargain and combo your opponent dead. But today you're in for a treat, as Xerk piloted an unconventional build of this deck utilizing Arboreal Grazer and Colony Garden over a more typical suite of mana dorks. So get your notepad ready and pay attention, because you're about to enter a masterclass on how to win in Modern. School is now in session. Jumping into Xerk's challenge run, we find ourselves in Game 3 of Round 1, battling against Jeskai Breach. Here, we reveal Xerk's first secret, which is to be virtuous. We've all heard the saying, patience is a virtue, and Xerk's play during this game exemplifies this skill. The early turns of the game have Xerk's opponent stalling on one land, which allows him to land an early endurance and keep double Dragon's Rage Channelers at bay. Having access to a hasty Strangleroot Geist signals to Xerk that now is a good time to get aggressive, while the opponent continues to flounder on limited resources. On the following turn, instead of simply jamming his Court of Calling into open mana, Xerk exemplifies his virtuous nature and waits patiently for the opportune moment to tutor a Yawgmoth into play. He attacks in with his Endurance, which is met by a block from a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Xerk sees the opening when a Lightning Bolt is cast from the opposite side of the table and convokes his Yawgmoth onto the board, drawing 2 cards and mowing down the remaining Channeler on the opposite side of the table. On the following turn, the Breach player finally hits their second land, but it's too little too late, as Xerk is just too far ahead on board. He untaps, plays out a Wall of Roots, follows that up with a Strangleroot Geist, attacks with the team, and then uses the second Court of Calling in his hand to get his Blood Artist and turn the lights out. In match number 2, we find ourselves in a heater against Burn. Let's slow down the pace to set the scene for Xerk's second secret. The early turns of the game, as expected, they attack in with a Goblin Guide, we chump block with our Yawgmoth, and then they play out a Rolling Vortex. We draw into an Eldritch Evolution, play out a Wall of Roots into a Haywire Might, pass the turn back. Opponent leads off with a Lava Spike, swings in with the Goblin Guide, which is an easy chump block with the Wall of Roots. The opponent then slips up. Moving into the second main phase, they cast Skewer the Critics, which allows the opportunity to kill the Rolling Vortex without the ability to prevent the life gain, which is critical in this matchup. We untap, play out a Strangleroot Geist, attack in with the Geist and the Yawgmoth, pass the turn back, opponent another burn spell, and they realize they don't have any good attacks, so they just pass the turn once more. We untap into the pivotal turn of the game and Xerk's second secret, which I like to call Know Your Role. Xerk uses his Eldritch Evolution to find a Yawgmoth, Thran Physician, and with the board state as is, he has assembled the Yawgmoth combo. But what he does next might surprise you. Instead of drawing a bunch of cards looking for the kill, he attacks in with both of his Undying creatures. The opponent proceeds to block with their Goblin Guide, and he proliferates his board up instead of sacrificing his creatures to draw more cards. With only 1 card in hand, the opponent has no outs to win the game from this position, and they wind up scooping the game and the match. Round 3, our opening 7 looks great, and we find ourselves paired against mono black Coffers. It's fairly obvious it's Coffers because they're the only ones that play that style of basic land. Xerk's turn 1, we fetch for an Overgrown Tomb, play out an Arboreal Grazer, trigger the Grazer. The opponent decides to Fatal Push the Grazer in response to the trigger. Colony Garden comes into play, get a plant token, pass the turn back. Turn 2, the opponent plays out their main deck Engineered Explosives and passes the turn back. We untap, fortunate enough to draw another land, play out the Wall of Roots into a Geist, swing in for 2. The opponent pops their Engineered Explosives before the end of turn. They do nothing as a follow-up. Our following turn, we swing in with the Geist once more, play out a Grist, uptick the Grist, and pass the turn back. The next turn is more of the same. The opponent does nothing. We uptick our Grist, attack in with the team. The opponent removes the Geist, and we are able to get a Yawgmoth into play using our Eldritch Evolution. Xerk activates Yawg's card draw ability several times until he finds a Yawgmoth, plays out the Yawgmoth, and then passes the turn back. I want to pause for a second and point out the opponent's life total at this moment of the game. Looking at the board state, you would think the move would be to find Blood Artist and combo kill because attacking for lethal just seems out of reach, right? Wrong. Xerk's third secret is revealed to us at this pivotal moment. The line isn't to combo kill, but instead to beat down, which is the quickest route to victory. He plays out a second Geist, sacrifices it to buff it to a 3/2, attacks, proliferates, and puts the opponent down to 4 life. From here, he is able to ultimate his Grist, which puts the opponent dead to rights. The next 2 games of this matchup were fairly lopsided as Leyline of the Void and Sundering Titan did the job for our Coffers player in Game 2, and good old-fashioned Undying Creature beatdown went the distance in Game 3. Game, set, match, we're 3-0. As we venture into round 4, Xerk is forced to mulligan down to 6 cards after an untenable opening 7, but he finds a clever way to recoup this card advantage through secret number 4, which we'll reveal momentarily. We lead out on turn 1 with a Yawgmoth, for which the opponent plays out a Savai Triome, which, in combination with Gigantha they revealed at the beginning of the game, indicates they are likely playing 5-color Domain. With only a Colony Garden to play on turn 2, our suspicions are confirmed when the opponent fetches for a Breeding Pool and plays out an Ashoba Brawler on their turn. Our turn 3, we recoup some of that card advantage by playing out a Grist, minusing, killing the Brawler, and returning our Yawgmoth into play. But once again, the opponent follows up with a huge threat as Scion of Draco hits the board on our opponent's turn. This leads us into secret number 4, setting traps. It is apparent that the Scion poses a huge threat and we have no choice but to get it dead. Xerk kamikaze attacks his Yawgmoth into the opposing dragon, making it an easy victim to Yawgmoth's -1/-1 ability in the second main phase. This play opens the game wide open for Xerk, giving him a significant advantage. The opponent follows up by lightning bolting down the Grist and casting out a Tarmogoyf on their turn. On our turn, drawing into our utility land Colony Garden represents an extra card with Yawgmoth on the battlefield. Playing out all the creatures in our hand, our board presence is now significant. Their opponent does their best to try to manage the situation and bolt down our Blood Artist, but we sacrifice our board of creatures in response, draining them for 1 with each Yawgmoth activation and drawing ourselves into 3 new cards. We're up to 15 life, and now Tarmogoyf is no longer the threat it once was. The opponent follows up by playing an Ashoba Brawler, for which we draw a card in response, finding ourselves a Wall of Roots. Moving back to Xerk's turn, he leads off by playing out a Wall of Roots and follows it up with a Grist in play, plussing the Grist, minusing with Yawgmoth's ability, drawing into an Ignoble Hierarch, and then swinging in for 3 with Yawgmoth. As a last-ditch effort, the opponent attacks in on their turn, which is met by chump blocks and activations from Yawgmoth, which draws more cards, further shrinking their creatures, and the opponent sees the writing on the wall and scoops them up. And then, something terrible happened. Over the next 2 rounds, Xerk gets paired against Blue-Red Murktide and Scam, losing both matches 0-2. Pay attention to the names of both of his opponents, as they're very relevant to another one of Xerk's secrets, which will be revealed in the finals. His back is now up against the wall, with a win in for top 8. We pick things up a few turns into our round 7 matchup against an endangered species within the modern metagame, Lotus Field Combo. This deck uses Twiddle effects to repetitively untap its Lotus Field and storm the opponent out using Grape Shot. Because it is such an uncommon matchup, it would be very reasonable for Xerk not to know how to navigate it perfectly. But no chance. Xerk dots his I's and crosses his T's as we reveal his 5th secret, Threat Detection. It's turn 4 of game 2 and Xerk has just untapped. Looking at the board, it doesn't look like much is going on, but our hero knows what's up. Xerk draws a Boseiju for turn, plays out a land, and moves to combat, and then hesitates. Why did he do that? He knows what he needs to play around and knows how to win from this point. Do you see it? Xerk simply passes the turn. The opponent proceeds to untap and cast Underworld Breach, which is the threat Xerk was wary of. He responds by casting Court of Calling for 1, getting an innocuous Yawgmoth into play, and allowing the breach to resolve. With Twiddle on the stack, Xerk Boseijus down the breach, neutralizing the imminent danger. He untaps, casts Haywire Might off of Suspend, attacks with his creature, and then casts out his Yawgmoth. His opponent proceeds to scoop, seeing the writing on the wall. All of that was set up by knowing what to play around and not attacking with the Yawgmoth. Simply masterful. Let's move on to top 8. To his dismay, the quarterfinals revealed Scam, which is generally regarded as an unfavorable matchup for Yawgmoth, but Xerk's confidence did not waver, as you'll notice in this epic Game 1. We're picking things up on turn 2. The opponent leads with a Terminate and attacks in with a Ragman, which is met with a block from the plant token. Xerk's turn 2, he plays out a Grist, upticks the Grist, and passes the turn back. But the opponent seems to have it all as they lead on a Dauthi Voidwalker and then casting out a Fury, killing the plant token and hitting Grist. Over the next several turns, Xerk is able to cast out 2 more Grists, the last of which finally sticks and is able to handle the threat of the Voidwalker on the other side of the table. Things start to look up when a top-decked Eldritch Evolution turns into a Yawgmoth and mows down the opposing board, drawing cards in the process. But the opponent had other plans as a Scam Fury hits the board and wipes all of Xerk's resources from the battlefield. With no choice but to rebuild, Xerk does just that. His next turn he casts out a Wall of Roots and Ignoble Hierarch and then casts Chord of Calling for another Yawgmoth. The card advantage train gets rolling again and Xerk starts to stabilize. He untaps on his next turn, casts out a Yawgmoth, Eldritch Evolutions it away, and gets a Blood Artist to preserve life total. Fetching for a Dryad Arbor, the engine is now fully online, and he starts drawing cards, looking for a second Undying creature to close out the game. A Wall of Roots hits the board, which represents 2 more cards, which draws into a Chord of Calling, finding the second Undying creature, and spelling defeat for the opponent. We're on to the semifinals. We pick things up in the middle of Game 3, where Xerk is once again paired against Scam, facing his round 6 opponent. With each player tied at 1 game apiece, this is do or die. Drawing a Chord of Calling off the top means Xerk now has access to Yawgmoth, but as we saw in the last match, Scam has plentiful answers to the Thran Physician. The opponent's lack of familiarity with Xerk's first secret leads them to casting out their Fury in an attempt to kill Grist, which instead turns into a great value turn for Xerk, removing the 1/1 counter from his Yawgmoth and drawing a card. Xerk proceeds to draw into a Strangleroot Geist and once again takes the road less traveled, opting to put a -1 counter on the Fury rather than draw cards with his combo. At this moment, Secret 6 is revealed. Don't autopilot into common play patterns. Once again, instead of going for a combo line, Xerk has planned ahead and put himself in a position to win. Having taken this line, Xerk astutely leaves double black mana available, which opens up a Proliferate line. With the coast now clear, Xerk is free to attack over the next 2 turns and punch his ticket to the finals. And just like that, another chance at redemption against our first loss of the tournament against Blue-Red Murktide. But if we're being honest, Xerk doesn't remember that because of our second to last secret, number 7, not letting past losses dictate future results. We picked things up in the middle of Game 2, which was quite a drawn-out affair. Right off the bat, we have an interesting scenario, which is a test of Xerk's first secret. Xerk leads with an attack, and then with the option to jam Yawgmoth into open mana, he decides to remain patient and pass the turn. This patience is immediately rewarded when the opponent decides to flash an address down at the end of turn. This provides the opportunity to sneak his second Endurance into play, avoiding counter magic. The Murktide pilot is unable to do anything without a graveyard and passes the turn back to Xerk. A swing for 7 puts the opponent on their back foot, and Xerk tests the waters and continues to apply pressure. Yawgmoth is met with a counterspell, which is followed up by a Dragon's Rage Channeler on the other side of the table, Expressive Iteration, and Murktide Regent on the following turn. But in true GOAT fashion, Xerk draws a Yawgmoth off the top, casts it out, and immediately sacrifices the Dryad Arbor to kill the Channeler. Ledger Shredder and a second Hearse join the party on the next turn, while the opponent makes the peculiar choice to draw a card with their Fiery Islet during their turn, presumably in an effort to pull an Unholy Heat off the top. No luck. Drawing Colony Garden means Xerk can redraw with a Yawg activation, and once again, like a savage, Xerk finds Chord of Calling. Playing around Spell Pierce, Hapatra is tutored up and Machine Gun Mode has been activated. Ledger Shredder and Murktide Regent get murked. The opponent needs to pull double Lightning Bolt off the top to win the game. They fire off Expressive Iteration, Seasoned Pyromancer, and double Mishra's Bauble to no avail. But they're not as good as we are. Challenge accepted. Challenge has been won. Which brings us to our 8th and final secret. Subscribe or perish. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I will see you all again very soon. You know the deal, everyone. Be well.